So right as I was wrapping up that video on NASCAR countersuing 2311, Front Row and Curtis Polk specifically, NASCAR announced their weekly penalty report. And last week, we saw a massive penalty. We saw 100 points deducted from Chase Briscoe's team after they went to the R&D center. The car got torn down, and that was a technical inspection. So something to do with the car. Well, this week's penalty report had to do with on-track actions. We saw 2 members of the Hendrick Motorsports number 5 team, 2 pit crew members. They are suspended for 2 races because Kyle Larson's right front wheel went off. That was the biggest story there. Yeah, no, it was not. Austin Cindric right rear hooked Ty Dillon coming off of traditional turn 20. I don't know what turn it is on the new course, but turn 20, coming off of it, Ty Dillon, Austin Cindric fighting hard for position. Ty Dillon forces Cindric into the dirt just a little bit. This is like lap 3, by the way. Cindric gets upset, goes down the track, clips Ty Dillon's right rear, and Ty Dillon goes spinning around, taps the outside wall, and also collects Zane Smith a little bit. And it didn't completely obliterate him. It didn't end his race right there. And heck, it didn't even warrant a caution. But the fact of the matter is, Austin Cindric intentionally wrecked someone, and that is frowned upon in NASCAR. History says, or history has shown, we saw in 2023, Chase Elliott, high-speed, mile-and-a-half track, intentionally wrecked Denny Hamlin. 1 race suspension. 2022, we saw Bubba Wallace, right rear hook. Kyle Larson, high-speed, mile-and-a-half track. 1 race suspension. Well, how about at a road course coming off a slow corner when you're not fully up to speed? Here you go. 50 points and $50,000. No suspension. NASCAR penalized Austin Cindric, driver of the number 2 Team Penske Ford, on Wednesday after an incident between him and Ty Dillon in last Sunday's Cup Series race at the Circuit of the Americas. NASCAR also hit the number 5 Hendrick Motorsports team with 2 pit crew suspensions after a lost wheel during the race. Early in Sunday's race, Cindric contacted the right rear of Dillon's number 10 Colleague Racing Chevy, sending Dillon spinning down the front stretch. NASCAR deemed Cindric's move to fall into the category of intentionally wrecking another vehicle under sections 4.4b and d, NASCAR Member Code of Conduct Penalty Options and Guidelines. As a result, Cindric lost 50 driver points and was fined $50,000, dropping him from 11th to 34th in the standings. NASCAR stopped short of giving him a 1-race suspension, something it did previously for drivers who intentionally wrecked other vehicles, most recently with Bubba Wallace on Kyle Larson in 2022 at Las Vegas, and Chase Elliott on Denny Hamlin in 2023 at Charlotte. Mike Ford, NASCAR Managing Director of Racing Communications, said in today's episode of Holler Talk, which is their podcast about NASCAR officiating decisions, the reasoning Cindric wasn't suspended, included the race being on a road course with lower speeds and tighter confines already, and that the incident didn't lead to a caution flag. The previous 2 incidents that led to those suspensions happened on a 1.5-mile speedway. This is actually, it's a little controversial. There's a lot of different opinions. Some people say if you intentionally wreck someone, you right rear hook someone, you should be suspended. The precedent has been set with Bubba and Chase. But you can actually find at least a couple that I could think of in the past few years where someone intentionally wrecked someone and did not get suspended. Just last year, Austin Dillon going for the win at Richmond. He spins out Joey Logano, and that's a typical spin out. No one was really mad about that. It was what he did next when he right-reared Denny Hamlin into the wall coming to the flag. And as a result, Austin Dillon, he got to keep the win. He got to keep the trophy, but they took away his points. They took away his playoff eligibility as a result of that win. But they did not suspend him. He was able to race the next week wherever we went to. Daytona, Watkins Glen, wherever we race next, Austin Dillon was still able to drive. If we go back just 2-3 years ago, Noah Gragson in the Xfinity Series at a road course, I might add. This is why I'm specifically bringing up this one. Xfinity Series road course, Road America, 2022, I believe. Noah Gregson fighting for position with Sage Karam. Doesn't like what Sage Karam does. Hooks a right on Karam, turns him across the track. A 13-car pileup ensues. As a result, multiple cars taken out of this race. Track is a mess. Gregson only got a 30-point deduction and a $35,000 fine. No suspension. Austin Cindric, what he did here, I would argue, is less than what Gregson did. And look, in terms of the penalty itself, the fines are different based on each league. So the Truck, Xfinity, Cup. Those fines, it's based on, the monetary value. So $50,000 in Cup is not equivalent to $35,000 Xfinity. I would say it's hard to equate anyways. But Gregson triggered a 13-car pileup by intentionally wrecking someone. In this instance, Austin Cindric, he intentionally wrecks Ty Dillon. It wrecks Ty Dillon's car. He has some damage. You could argue it ends his day, but he was able to continue on. And as an innocent bystander, Zane Smith gets involved. He has to slow down, might have got a little bit of damage, lost a bunch of spots. So he impacted two people's races. So yes, there was no question that Austin Cindric was going to get penalized. I 100% agree. You should not be intentionally wrecking someone, whether it's at Vegas, Charlotte, Talladega, COTA, Martinsville, LA Coliseum. It doesn't matter where. You should not be intentionally wrecking anyone. However, I hear the argument. For, yes, he should be suspended. He intentionally wrecked someone. He right-reared hooked someone. The precedent has been set. He should not be racing at Phoenix this week. And it's kind of turns into a gray area what my opinion is, and that is I understand why they didn't suspend him. It's because it was not at a high speed. It's because he did not obliterate Ty Dillon. Yes, he impacted Ty Dillon's race, and that's why I think he should have been, and many others in NASCAR itself think he deserves some sort of penalty, and he got a pretty harsh penalty. That's almost a full race in points. The most points you can get in a race is 61, so a 50-point penalty, that's a second-place finish with a lot of stage points. But it was not quite what Chase did to Denny. It's not quite what Bubba did to Larson. But once again, we're kind of in a gray area because, once again, I understand the counter argument. I understand at what speed do we start suspending people? Is it 120, 130? Do we have to get up to 150? Like, how fast do we have to be going for someone to get intentionally wrecked and for it to result in a suspension? I don't know. Just to put it blatantly, I don't know. It's a tough line, I guess. And then another factor to just really complicate this is NASCAR's new rule, the Larson waiver, the Larson rule, as many are calling it. Because Larson missed the Coke 600, NASCAR added into the rule book for the playoff waiver, if you miss a race that is not medical, a family emergency, or something that's understandable, so like the birth of a child, you broke your leg, or a death in the family, something like that. If it's you want to go race IndyCar this week and you miss the NASCAR race, or you get suspended, or you sleep in, I don't know, and you miss the race, you lose your playoff eligibility. And as a result, you have to get a waiver. But when you get your waiver, you do not get to keep any playoff points from the season. So Austin Cindric, I think, has won a stage this year. So as of right now, he has 1 playoff point. Let's say he goes and wins Talladega at the end of April. That's 6 playoff points, and he makes the playoffs. Well, if he had been suspended this week, he would have lost those playoff points. He would have entered the playoffs with 0 playoff points instead of 6 because of the new waiver process. So I don't know if that's why they made the decision that way. Really don't. And once again, it's a tough line. It's a tough area to judge. It's not tough in terms of penalizing. If you intentionally wreck someone, you should be penalized. Straight up. No questions asked. Austin Cindric deserved a penalty this week for what he did at COTA, for what he did to Ty Dillon. However, the severity of the penalty is what comes in question. Should he have been suspended? Should he have essentially lost his playoff eligibility and all the playoff points that he will get if he were to make the playoffs. And that's the question. At what point, at what speed, or at what type of racetrack does a right rear hook, does an intentional wreck turn into a suspension? I don't know what that hard number is. I cited a couple of wrecks from years past that did not result in suspension, a couple that did. It's for you to have your opinion on. I shared my opinion with you, so let me know what your opinion is. Should Cindric have been suspended? Should he have just received the points penalty and the fine? Once again, I think this is a fine penalty. 50 points, $50,000. It drops him from 11th to 34th in the standings. He only has 30 points now on the season. Still ahead of 2 Joe Gibbs racing cars, though, so I guess he's got that going for him. But obviously, this has dug them a massive hole early in the season. They did such great work at Daytona and Atlanta, and now it's all down the drain because of a poor decision on track by Cindric, and he has been penalized for that poor decision. So let me know what your thoughts are on the incident, on the crash, on the penalty, all that stuff. And busy day so far. We'll see if there's any more NASCAR news for the rest of today.